Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, the fire sale season is still upon us. We had another Dynasty trade that went down. We're going to give you our reaction plus a Week 9 recap. If you've been following along and tuning in to these episodes where we've been giving you a behind-the-scenes look into our Dynasty Salary Contract League, this is the 8th trade that we've seen now in the regular season. Now, I don't know how that compares to your traditional Dynasty Leagues out there. I'd be even putting your comments below. I'd be curious how many Dynasty trades have happened in your league if you are in a Dynasty League. But I have to think, Joe, that the 8 that we're seeing in our Dynasty Salary Contract League is above the norm. And I think a lot of that has to do with the player movement because of the contracts, because of the salaries. We talk about this ad nauseum when it comes to talking about this format. This is why it is the best format out there.
Yeah, also be curious, we know some people out there watching also play in salary cap and contract leagues. Be curious to know how many trades they also have kind of to further compare between traditional dynasty leagues and this format, or is it just kind of, unique to our league that we've got so many different trades?
Yeah, that would be really interesting. For us, I think we also see, just like in the NFL, when the deadline comes, you see a lot of trades. I know some people feel like you shouldn't have a deadline, but for us, we've seen a lot of value in it. We see it's not a surprise to see 6, 7, 8, even 8 trades happen just before the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, similar like you mentioned in the NFL. I mean, I feel like the deadline day pushes these teams to kind of make these moves and makes them want to be more aggressive in the actual NFL. And then in turn, it also, I feel like, makes our league more aggressive as well. Where if it wasn't for the trade deadline, I feel like some of these deals that happen at the deadline wouldn't necessarily happen if there wasn't one.
I agree with you. And we've got our 8th trade here, and this is a blockbuster. This is not just a, minimal trade here. So we're going to give you what happened and give you our reaction here. So the first trade was between John and Mark. John received wide receiver Xavier Worthy, 3 years, +1, that 5th-year option, $9.2 million. Contract is fully guaranteed. Wide receiver Jameson Williams, Mark recently extended him. Opposite traded him. He hasn't really been this productive this season. A lot of people were expecting a boom year for him. Really has not been the case. But anyways, his contract now 3 years, $24.7 million, including $24.5 million guaranteed. And running back Travis Etienne on an expiring contract, 1 year, $8 million contract is fully guaranteed. He's playing out his 5th-year option. Mark in return receives a 2026 second-round pick, a 2026 fourth-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick, and a 2027 second-round pick. This now gives Mark, I believe, 3, if not 4 first-round picks in 2027. Joe, what is your reaction to this trade here?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. You got in the league where, not a lot of, young assets typically get dealt. I mean, a couple of young wide receivers and Xavier Worthy and Jameson Williams on the move here. And then, finally, Travis Etienne is on the move from Mark's team. Guy we highlighted that would just make sense being that he's on a 1-year deal for Mark to be able to offload. So finally, he found a trading partner in John to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I mean, 2027 class definitely is looking better than 2026 class. And I think Mark is stockpiling picks in the right draft class. And like you said, he's got a bunch of them now. But, I think, John's got a pretty good team. I think we were talking about him just kind of lacking some wide receiver depth and some depth on his offense could stop him from potentially being one of the top teams and getting into the playoffs and competing. But I mean, I know Williams has been disappointing, but I think he still has the potential if the Lions decide to, unleash him and make him more involved. I mean, he made a big play last week, so we'll see if that can kind of continue as the season goes here. And Xavier Worthy, he's interesting, still a really young asset, but it just whenever Rashee Rice comes back, he just seems to really be like second fiddle in that offense.
Yeah, I like the move for John. I think that I like it for both teams. Again, I think this is a trade where both teams get a win out of this. I think when it comes to John, right now his main receivers are Puka Nacua and Khalil Shakir. So now with that influx of talent with Jameson Williams and Xavier Worthy, now he could start all 4. could opt to, he has a decent amount of running backs. He could start Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, or Travis Etienne, or Kenneth Walker. So he's got a lot of options now on his offense. He can somewhat play the matchups. So I think for John, his wide receivers, he was having to start DeAndre Hopkins, most weeks. And DeAndre Hopkins is, he's not going to do you much. Remember, this is a 16-team league we're talking about here. So some teams just don't have the depth. So I think for John, as we know, being a part of the league as long as we have, it's very rare to see a team being willing to trade a young wide receiver, let alone two. Wide receiver, I would say probably quarterback, wide receiver, and defensive end are probably your top three positions. And it's pretty hard to acquire any one of those. I mean, you got to be an elite defensive end. If you're elite, it's pretty difficult. Kind of a middling one you could probably get no problem. But a stud receiver, a stud DN, or a stud quarterback, very rarely do you see those guys get traded. And here's the thing, Williams and Worthy are not studs. And I think that's where I give a lot of props to Mark for going ahead and making these trades and stockpiling those picks, because I don't really know if Williams or Worthy are really going to turn out to be this alpha receiver. I think that Mark now, with that 2027 first, he's going to have a lot of draft capital. Even the 2026 second round pick, the draft capital he's got there, I think he could do a lot with those picks. So to me, I really like what Mark was able to get for those guys, and Travis Etienne as well. We saw Mark do a pretty bold move in the offseason, trading Brian Thomas Jr. at the peak of his value. And he has not looked as good, with this coaching staff of Liam Cohen. So I think, for John, I believe he's playing Dan this week. If he plays Dan, he's eyeing the bye week right here at the number 1 seed. So I like the aggressive move.
Yeah, I definitely like the aggressive move by John. And like you said, I mean, definitely is an upgrade over what he was doing. I mean, Kamara has been an absolute disappointment. So is Kenneth Walker, for that matter. So him being able to get Travis Etienne in there will certainly help.
So head over to our Week 9 recap. We go through all of the matchups in our 16-team league. First, we've got myself versus Jake. I thought this was a must-win game for me. I was very pleasantly surprised with the outcome. I win this game 352.65 to Jake's 275. I will say I am absolutely, and this, you won't be surprised I'm saying this, but if you're in IDP leagues, maybe you're feeling the same way. I wonder if Chris Jones, man, if he's just hitting a wall. I am so frustrated with this guy. I gave him I chased the name value. I'm getting burned. I think I'm starting to think I'm just going to bench him the rest of the year. And my hope is that, I trade you Bradley Chubb and Dallas Goedert. These guys did nothing for me last year. I sent them in free agency, like, oh, yeah, they won't do anything. And all of a sudden, they've come back to life and they're really good. So I'm like, maybe Chris Jones is going to be really good next year. I just have to, ditch him for now.
Yeah, he's interesting. Like I know he's, over 30 or whatever, but we've seen guys do that before. And I mean, heck, you got Calais Campbell. He's pushing 40 and he's still performing at a better
Incredible
clip. So I don't know. I just don't know if it's if he's frustrated, if it's an effort thing, or just doesn't want to can't get past the double teams anymore. I don't know what it is, but I don't see at this point how you possibly can start him. I mean, he's just been an absolute disappointment and not accruing that many points.
So how are you feeling if you're Jake on the Jake's team here? Jake is now 5-4. I'm 5-4. Jason is 5-4. But right now, Jake is on the outside looking in. He would not be making the playoffs. If the season were in today, he would miss the playoffs, which I believe would be the first time for Jake to miss the playoffs. And we had talked about him being the number 1 team. You think Jake, based on the talent he has on his roster, do you think he can turn this ship around, or do you what do you think? What would you advise? What are your thoughts here with Jake's team right now?
Yeah, I don't know as far as Jake's. I don't know if he can turn it around. I mean, he doesn't have an elite quarterback to get elite quarterback play, and it's just honestly, I don't know if he can weather the storm with the injuries that he's had to his stud players. I
He's
mean, I think,
ravaged with injuries right
yeah, I
now.
mean, not
Absolutely
having a guy like
ravaged.
Malik Neighbors, you know, a Nick Bosa, just you know, a couple of names off the top there that would be dramatically helping his team. So I don't know if I was Jake if I do anything crazy. I think maybe you just ride out the season and hopefully next year with more help that it goes better way.
Well, Micah Parsons has been a huge disappointment with the Packers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's causing an impact, and I think he's affecting the other players around him. But this is his worst statistical season in his career. So I mean, he's playing okay. I mean, it's not like he's like absolutely dreadful, but he's not the stud impact player that we have seen over the past few years.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, I think he's brought a more positive impact overall to the Green Bay Packers and he's helped, you know,
Look
other
at Rashawn
guys.
Gary.
Exactly. The counterparts, guys in amongst the interior, everyone else seems to be performing better, but he's just not getting the sack numbers himself, which is honestly disappointing because for fantasy, you really need him to put up those numbers and get those sacks.
Next matchup here, we got Jason versus Tim. Jason gets the victory here, 355.7 to Tim's 292.65. I thought this was interesting. Jason just made that recent trade with Andrew, trading away Tucker Kraft, who unfortunately tore his ACL, and Devon Achan. But it didn't stop him. I mean, I when I saw that number, I'm like, wow. Like Jason's team has been one of the surprising teams for me. I didn't know if he had the firepower to compete, but I'm looking at that number and I'm like, oh boy, like he's right on my heels. I'm like, I hope I don't miss the play. I got to play him later on in my division. I'm like, his team has performed a lot better than I thought it was going to perform.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially losing a guy like Achan, but I mean, Lamar Jackson comes back from, you know, put up 67 points. Christian McCaffrey doing what he does, and you know, gets 0.7 from Brashard Smith, gets 1.9 from Luke McCaffrey as he left early in that game with an injury. You know, just didn't matter, and you know, still put up a bunch of points. Obviously, Josh Sweat had a monster game, which really helped him as well. But
He's
yeah,
had a really
Jason,
good. He's done really well with the Cardinals in general. I was not
yeah.
expecting that.
No, I know you were disappointed with the Cardinal spot when he got there.
Joe, it's his best statistical season right now. Looking at if you look at fantasy points per game in our league, he's averaging 21 points a game. It's the best that he's ever done. I would not
Yeah,
have saw that coming.
yeah. But yeah, and I like you mentioned, I mean, Jason really is an interesting spot. You know, he's border right there in the playoff hunt, even though he's sold off some pieces. I mean, this just shows you his team's still pretty formidable and can, you know, score in bunches in any given week here.
Yeah, as far as Tim goes, we keep talking about him. I don't want to feel like I'm harping on him, but another loss for Tim. This sinks him down to 3-6. He's the 11th seed right now. Things are looking pretty bleak. I'll be curious to see if Tim does anything. Maybe it gets closer to the deadline. Maybe he'll start selling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, as we keep saying, he definitely should. But you know, the deadline would be a good time if he is going to wait to go ahead and see what he can't get, and I think he maximized the value there.
Next matchup here, we got Charlie versus Chris and Nolan. Chris and Nolan won pretty handily, 358.2 to Charlie's 282.85. Although Charlie, you know, he finally got a good game out of his quarterback with Penix with 52 points, but it was not enough.
Yeah, I was going to say honestly, one of the better weeks for Charlie. I feel like this season, but just didn't matter. You know, the Grants just did better and put up 358 points.
Yeah, and that was even with them having Leatu Latu, which had a fantastic game against the Steelers with 2.5 sacks. He was on their bench. They would have done even better had they started him on top of it.
Yeah, interesting that they didn't play him.
No, but their team is definitely a formidable team. I think they are squarely in the playoff hunt here. I'm playing them this week, so it should be a big matchup here. No doubt.
Yeah, I mean they're sitting at 7-2. You know, tied. They got the tied for the best record. The 7-2 is the best record. There's 4 teams, so yeah, you got an interesting matchup. This will really show you. You know, are you a contender or pretender, Steve?
Oh boy, hopefully I'm in the contender circle. Next matchup here, we got Paul versus Josh. Paul ended up squeaking out a win here, 283.45 to Josh's 265.6. I think honestly, put this loss at Mahomes. Only scoring 3.5 points for Josh, which is unacceptable. I would have thought he would have done a lot better against the Bills the first time he threw under 50%. But yeah, it just Josh, is one of the highest scoring teams. But Paul, has been fairly consistent here for the season. I think if Mahomes had a different outcome, this would have changed things for sure.
Well, not even just Mahomes. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs only 4.3 points, which is well under his normal
That's
average as well.
uncharacteristic too. Yeah,
That's what I mean. And especially, that was a Minnesota team who had just come off of giving up a bunch of points to Kamani Vidal the week before, which I thought Jahmyr Gibbs in that Lions backfield was going to do better. But, both just a bad luck performance out of Josh for Mahomes and Gibbs to perform like that on the same week. But, once again, Paul with the consistent amount of points gets another win.
and he continues to prove us wrong, Joe.
He certainly does.
Next week, there we got Joe. This was an interesting matchup, you versus Mark. This is more going towards who's going to get the number 1 seed. And even with Mark not playing a full roster here, he scored very well this week, which honestly kind of scares me because I play him later in the year. I'm like, you don't need to be scoring that many points later on. Like, this should be a gimme win. But 328.3 points from Mark to your 166.65. I think this was your worst scoring week of the year. Honestly, this is what I was more expecting your team to do from the beginning. But your team has done very well in performing, but not this week.
Yeah, this week was a down week. But yeah, typically I feel like this is one of the worst scoring performances I've had on the season. But at least when you do face Mark later, he's not going to have ETN, Xavier Worthy, and Jameson Williams.
Yeah,
on his
that'll be
team.
nice. That'll be nice. Yeah, that's a good point.
Contributors on his offense.
Yeah, that's a good point. That should help me out.
For sure.
Next matchup here, we got Tom versus Adam. Tom loses his game 287.9 to Adam 306.55. And this honestly is just the fact that Tom doesn't even have a starting quarterback right now. He had started Jake Browning. He only had Joe Burrow as his quarterback. It's really haunted him not having a backup quarterback. I know that was sort of his strategy, but I wonder if he's kicking himself a little bit because he still has a really good all around team. Had he had a decent backup to be working with, his record might look a lot different. I mean, he's 3-6 right now, but it could look a lot different. Because he's primarily had no quarterback, or he'd fill in Carson Wentz or what have you. But I just wonder, would have been worth some of the cap space to just have a decent backup quarterback.
Yeah, or I mean, heck, Mark put up a guy like Dak Prescott up for sale. Would it have made sense for him to try to acquire him? And we kind of said this was kind of getting to Tom's point where the rubber is going to meet the road here. Do you decide to play for next year or try to make a move to make your, solidify that quarterback position to get your team in contention? I mean, he's a couple of games out for the playoffs, but if he doesn't start making that decision soon, it's more so at this point you're playing for the future.
Well, and you saw he cut Cam Hayward. So,
right.
And him doing that was to save a ton of cap space, and now he will be eligible for the max rollover to next year. And so, to me, that signals everything you need to know. That if you're trying to compete and you're trying to make the playoffs, you're not cutting Cam Hayward.
Yeah, that's a good point. And interesting enough, Adam ended up getting Cam Hayward despite putting his team up for some fire sale potential, and he ends up getting the win and scoring over 300 points here.
Yeah, and I could see. I think it made some sense for him. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone decides to sign Cam Hayward in the offseason, if he doesn't decide to sign him as a free agent, he could possibly get a compensatory pick out of it. So to me, it's like if he had the cap space, why not? Or maybe you could trade him later. Maybe some team would be interested if a significant defensive tackle injury comes down. He seems like a logical guy that someone would trade for.
Yeah, I was really surprised that some of the upper echelon teams didn't be a little bit more aggressive in them getting Cam Hayward on their squad. Because I mean, defensive tackle is not a position that's very deep, or typically people have a lot of depth there.
Oh yeah, I mean Paul has over 20 million in cap space. Why he didn't drop 10 million is beyond me. Doesn't
Yeah,
make any sense.
a lot of guys want the cap rollover, I guess, but I mean, especially somebody like Paul, he's really in the thick of it in one of the top teams. I think he should have definitely put his hat in there.
Yeah, I mean Grady Jarrett got him 0 points, and Javad Kinlaw got him 1.5. I mean,
Yeah, Hayward scored 15.
yeah, I mean, look, I mean that's a big difference right there. All right, next matchup here. This was a pretty important matchup. This was Aaron versus Dan. Aaron ended up actually beating Dan here, 336.6 to Dan's 319.75. It definitely went down to the wire. It was C.D. Lamb versus Will Johnson. Will Johnson ended up scoring 23 points, having a forced fumble, 5 solo tackles, assisted tackle, and a pass deflection. He had a really good game, and it allowed for Aaron to secure the win. So that was a very impressive win on Aaron's part. Now Dan is, he was for sure going to be the number one guy. Now, we got a big matchup this week. Dan is the number 1 seed. John is the number 2 seed. John just made this huge trade. So this is really for the number 1 seed, possibly, this matchup here. So this has huge implications coming up next week. But a lot of that was due to the fact of what Aaron was able to accomplish here this week against Stan.
Yeah, it was a impressive win for Aaron here, and Dan gets Myles Garrett back this week, who was on bye against Aaron here, so he gets him at a pivotal time for the matchup against John.
Yeah, and I think with Aaron, it'll be interesting. I mean, the Jaden Daniels injury, I think, could be pretty huge. Going into the season, he had Jaden Daniels, Goff, and Geno Smith. Ended up cutting Geno Smith to save some cap space. He signed Marcus Mariota, but now that basically means you're starting Goff week in and week out. And, Goff has shown himself to be capable, but he's no Jaden Daniels. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Jaden Daniels hasn't been all that good this year, per se. So, but I don't know. He's kind of pigeonholed now into, going with Goff. So I just will be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a lot worse than Jared Goff and having to start him every week. I think Aaron will be just fine. And like you mentioned, Jaden Daniels trying to battle through injury pretty much all season here. He just hasn't been nearly as good as he was in his rookie year.
All right, our last matchup here, we got Andrew versus John. John ended up doing very well. Beat Andrew by over 100 points, 358.3 to Andrew's 247.5. We had talked about Andrew's name as Wandale, how long, or he changed his name to Wandale, how long I keep this up. And you and I had speculated that it might be pretty difficult for Andrew to keep this up. Well, he's been in an absolute free fall. I want to say he's lost 3 games straight here. And he's on the verge, if he loses the next week, he's on the verge of not even being in the playoff hunt. This is very interesting to see what's going to happen with Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy considering he started out, 6-0 on the season. To think that he could drop out of, playoff contention, despite making an aggressive move with Jason. I mean, it is unfortunate that Tucker Kraft is now off for season. Hate to see that. I mean, he was really performing well this year, but that's going to really hurt, Andrew's team. He was a big part of that trade along with Devin Achane. But, and the wear of Indiana Jones kind of fell off this week, and Daniel Jones and kind of returned against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
He really did, which is crazy because the Steelers defense has been so bad.
Yeah.
So you would have thought that they would just continue to collect, but they did not. So Andrew's got Aaron this week. So that's a playoff matchup right there.
Yeah.
So he could very well go down to 4 losses and now be out of the playoff hunt. So it's too bad for him, especially because he made that aggressive trade for Tucker Kraft and Devon Achane. It's just unfortunate with the ACL injury now with Tucker Kraft. It's like you lost him this year, and by the time he's back up and running, who even knows how he comes back from the injury? And then after that, he'll be a free agent. So basically that part of the deal is kind of sunk.
Yeah, yeah, which is unfortunate for him, especially if he isn't able to make the playoffs. And yeah, that's going to be a tough matchup against Aaron next week as well.
Yeah, we got definitely some marquee matchups coming up this week. So definitely, as we look into previewing for next week when we go through the results, we probably will see quite the shakeup as far as where things stand in the playoff picture.
Yeah, for sure. And as that continues to get sorted out, it also kind of shape up who we expect to be aggressive at our trade deadline, and who is going to be buyers, who's going to be sellers.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our Week 9 recap as well as another Dynasty trade that went through, and there probably will be more. We see a lot of trades in this league since its inception over 6 years. I want to say we've had like over 300 plus trades. So, makes for it to be a lot of fun. And if you haven't tried this format of a Dynasty incorporating salaries and contracts, you really ought to, because it really just makes it all the more fun. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode where we went through our Week 8 recap, as well as some other Dynasty trades that took place. You're going to want to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.